And like I say, sometimes those things don't happen because other things are, dare I say, planned for you to happen. And those other things that happen either lead to meeting somebody else that leads to another wonderful opportunity. So try not to be discouraged by the no's. Trust that, you have the talent, and really believe in yourself in that regard.
Well, welcome to the podcast today. We have Alex Sharpe with us, a good friend of mine. Excited to have you join us. And just as a little bit of an introduction, Alex is one that you probably may recognize from the group Celtic Woman. That you toured all over the world, all over the US and really all over the world. So we're excited to have you here with us today. I know you're doing a lot of other things since Celtic Woman now, but Alex, maybe start right at the beginning. How did you end up getting into music in the first place?
I ended up getting into music because I was trying to get out of school classes. Nice. So my brother, when I was in primary school, which is like your elementary school, I was probably about 8. My brother said to me, he had joined the school choir, and he said, Alex, if you join the choir, you get off school half a day early on a Friday. And I'm like, sign me up. Literally, that's what I did. I was like, anything to get out of being in the classroom. So I ended up just joining the choir, and the choir director was also a teacher in the school, but she loved to do Gilbert and Sullivan productions, which are operettas. So they are incredibly challenging, difficult pieces of music. So that's what she wanted to do with a bunch of elementary school kids. So I was actually a very very shy kid, like really, really shy. I was the only girl. I had 2 brothers, but I was very, very close and clingy to my mom. But the first time I kind of got on stage was actually in a production after all the rehearsals. I felt really at home. I felt really, it was a place where I was able to feel not inhibited. It was kind of a place that I was able to escape to. And I guess it was a place where I had a sense of freedom of expressing myself, which was a huge, I guess, a release. And it was just a magical place for me, performing and being on stage, and I never thought I would end up in the industry professionally, but it was definitely a magical place where I really kind of came alive and kind of was able to escape this shyness, which is quite contradictory to what most people would think a shy child would end up doing. But it's actually quite common that a lot of performers are naturally actually quite shy and introverted. But yeah, so that's how it started.
So as you were a kid, I mean, did your mom encourage you to do the choir and the music at all? Or did she say, no, you need to learn a real job? And
no, anybody who would meet my mom would know she's the most unserious person in the world. My mom is a big child at heart, and she's got a great imagination. Our family are actually all very creative, although none of the family were, professional musicians or anything. My granddad would play by ear. He would play the piano, and he was a great storyteller. And my mom's sisters are all very creative, artistic, great dressmakers. So there was always a creativity kind of in the family, but, nobody had kind of gone into performing or anything like that. So it actually came as a surprise. In fact, it was a surprise to my mom that I could actually sing. She didn't know I could sing. I don't think I knew I could sing. And it kind of happened all at the same time when I joined that choir. I used to, I remember actually being in my mom's bedroom, and myself and my brother were just playing around and messing and joking. And I started to do this impression of my grandmother, and I pretended to be her singing. And so I would do the wobbly vibrato the way she used to do it. And my mom goes, actually, that's actually not that bad. And she's tried to get me to sing properly and kind of, adapt a bit of the vibrato. And so that's kind of how I found out I could, had some sort of a singing voice, was just by, I don't know, just playing around. And so that was the first time my mom actually found out I could sing, just by by messing. So no, it was never out of a serious place at all. Yeah, that's how it started off.
And I know you ended up, so you were in Ireland area, but you ended up going fairly early in your career into London and doing kind of the Broadway type of career a little bit, right?
Yeah. So, well, I spent a lot of years here in Ireland. So I originally, I never knew or never thought that I would end up professionally in the industry. I hadn't a clue of how to even go about it. And particularly back in Ireland then, like when I was, you know, of that young age, there were no real theatre schools. There's loads of them now, but there was nothing really. There was one, you know, and it just didn't seem like an opportunity financially that was open to me. So I ended up, when I did finish school, my two loves were performing and traveling. So I actually ended up, I went to like a technical college to become a travel agent. So that's what I ended up doing. And I worked for a couple of years in the industry as a travel agent, but at the same time, I was still performing. So I was performing in school and I was entering into karaoke competitions or talent competitions in a local pub or whatever. And the money I would earn if I won or got, you know, came second or third, I would go on a holiday. And that was what I would do in my summers. I would go and, you know, I'd earn the money, enter these competitions, get the money to go on a holiday. So it worked out great. Yeah, so I actually had heard on the radio that they were doing open auditions for a professional production of The Wizard of Oz, and they were looking for somebody to play the role of Dorothy. And they had an open auditions. And so I went along. There was hundreds of other girls, and kind of just kept getting whittled down through the audition process, kept getting callbacks, and then got cast as in the role. And it was an absolutely incredible experience for lots of different reasons. But out of that, the production manager of that production was opening up an agency at the time. So I got an agent, which is really vital if you want to be seen for stuff. So I ended up getting an agent, and I actually spent 8 years in Ireland working professionally before I went away to London. I'd been back and forth and auditioned for different productions, but I'd get callbacks, but it never kind of came to anything. And then when I was 27, I got cast as Eponine in Les Mis. So that was kind of like my first exit from Ireland. But it was wonderful to be here for those 8 years, because it's quite a small community here. It's a small city and country. So I kind of got the first-hand experience of doing lots of different types of performing. I would do a musical theatre, or I would do concert, or I do pantomime, or I would do cabaret, or I would do some recording work. So I really kind of got to hone my craft and, you know, just kind of learn different skills on the job and learn from seasoned professionals that I would be working with, which was hugely beneficial, like really, really beneficial. Just watching all these people who'd been doing it, veterans, you know, at their art for years. So then, yeah, eventually went away to England and toured with Les Mis for 2 years, which was an amazing experience, because it was kind of like another step up from what I was learning here in Ireland, just to see how things were run, to see how this very, very slick machine runs. You know, a tour, but a production on that scale. So, and also learning to maintain a level of performance for like 2 years, 8 shows a week. You know, that was hard. So I had to really, really learn, you know, you have to keep it at a standard. You can't kind of fall below that. You can't just turn on, you know, automatic pilot, because you have a new audience every single night coming in. And with a touring production, we weren't set down. We weren't in London. We weren't the London show. We were reviewed we did 10 weeks in each city. So we were reviewed. The local newspapers would come in and reviews. Mm-hmm. So we were constantly, the maintenance of the show was always, was really, really, you know, very, very high, because, you know, it was a reflection on Cameron Mackintosh's company, you know, if they got a bad review. So we were very well, you know, kind of got a lot of attention from the creatives that would come in from London. So that was a huge learning experience. Just just having to kind of maintain that level of commitment to a performance, 8 shows a week over 2 years. And then after that, I went into, we were the original cast for A Beautiful Game, which was Andrew Lloyd Webber's show, which was We Were in London. So I ended up doing that for a year, and then came home to Ireland for a little bit, and then ended up getting a call to go into Celtic Woman.
Well, and so Celtic Woman, tell me how that happened. I mean, they just called you and they're like, hey, she's a good singer, so we need.
Well, it's huge. So a lot of the stuff, a lot of kind of opportunities that happen in the industry, they usually come about because you've worked with somebody before and they've remembered you, or when something is coming up, they'll think, oh, I think that person is right for this, or, you know, they weren't right for that other thing that we were casting, but I think they might be right for this. And so I had David Downs, who was kind of like the brainchild of the musicality of the whole show and did all the arrangements and everything. It was kind of really his baby in a way. But I had worked with David many years before that, on a concert that was just a one-off concert in the National Concert Hall here, and he was just a musician in the orchestra, and he remembered me from that and had approached me a year or two later to do work with him actually in a hotel down in the country. But that never came about because I think he got offered another job. So I never actually had worked with him outside of that, but he had remembered, oh, I know what happened. I was doing a musical called The Wireman, and he was very good friends with Shay Healy, who was the composer and the writer of the music. He had been in to see the musical that I was working in, with that Shay had written, and it was just kind of prior to when Celtic Woman, it was just post the Celtic Woman. I think I did that in, I don't know. Anyway, it was just, I think a year or maybe 2 years at tops when Celtic Woman had started, and Lisa Kelly was having her baby. She was having Ellie, her third child, so she needs to go on maternity leave, and he just recently seen me in the show, and he kind of thought, he made that connection. I thought, oh, okay, I think
made an impression then. That's awesome.
Well, he remembered me, that's for sure. Yeah, I think they were. I think they were a little hesitant at first. I don't think they knew, because he hadn't actually really worked with me on a production yet. But yeah, it worked out good. So that's how I ended up getting involved with Celtic Woman. And I was only supposed to just fill in for Lisa for her maternity leave, but it ended up being something that was long term because Orla Fallon left, and so I ended up being there full time.
Got it. And how many years was that? You guys went on tour, I know the US, and then you did.
I
did
Asia
tour too, right?
Yeah, I actually didn't end up doing the Asia tour, but I did go out to Japan and China to do different kind of one-off kind of promo things with them. But I never was. I just kind of kept missing those Australian tours and those Asia tours. But like I said, I did go out to do some promotional stuff where we were just doing concerts out there, but I didn't tour with them outside of that. We were just all in the US, but I did 3 years with them full time, and then I went back in 2015 for the 10-year reunion, and then back again in 2018 for I was filling in for Susan. She had a family emergency, so I filled in for that, and then we did a private corporate event for them as well. Myself and Lynn did that. I think that was, I want to say 2019.
So as you look back, I mean, two very different experiences. You're doing kind of the Broadway productions, and then you're doing a concert on the road where you're moving often. I mean, what things would you, if you were in front of a college class and talking to somebody like, okay, here's what it's like here, here's what it's like in the other, is there a big difference or things you wish you would have known going into one or the other that would have been helpful to know up front?
Of the touring aspect of things?
Of the touring, of each type of tour. I'm sure there's things that you learn from doing each thing.
Well, the nice thing about when I was touring with the musical production, now it's probably different. They don't set down as long, but we always were set down for a while. So you kind of got a time to kind of just settle into a new space.
Yep.
Yeah. Get to kind of feel what that theater is like, get to kind of judge what, your performance level kind of needed to be at and how to work the space. Whereas with Celtic Woman, and it was actually more restful because you got to go home to the same bed every night. Once you're touring with, you know, something like Celtic Woman, you're kind of moving on every night. So your space is changing every night. Your the theater that, or the arena that you're performing. So I had to get used to in-ears. I had to get used to just a very different way of using my voice, even, you know, just a very different acoustic with doing a musical theater show as well. But so getting used to that. But once I got used to the in-ears, then it didn't really change. The sound didn't change in each venue for me. So, but that was an adjustment. Having to sleep on a bus some of the time, that interrupted sleep. So although, to be honest, the demand of the show, it wasn't a particular, I mean, when I did Les Mis, it was nearly 3.5 hours long. It was a long show. And we also played ensemble before we turned into our actual characters. A lot of people don't know that in Les Mis, you always play ensemble, and then you've got a couple of scenes, you change costume, and then you go into your principal role. So it was a very physically, very, very demanding in that way, the actual show. Whereas Celtic Woman itself, the show wasn't as physically demanding or even vocally as demanding. But because of the constant sleeping, changing every night, you might get on the bus and travel for 4 hours and wake up and go into a hotel, or it might be 2 hours, or it might be 6 hours. So it was constantly changing, and that I found that quite demanding. So you really have to look after yourself, you know, on a tour like that. Like, as people would say, like the Celtic Woman tour was like a rock concert tour. Mm-hmm. Like the schedule was like that, you know. So it was, and then I had my son on the road with me for some of the time as well.
Well, so that was what led you eventually to kind of step away from.
Yeah, it was too tough. I mean, I initially had him with me for as much of it as I could. And we had it when I was full time, and then we had a tutor on the road. But then when he would go back into mainstream school at home, it was very difficult for him to kind of just adjust. And I was just feeling guilty, and I just didn't think it was fair on him. So then on the very long tours, I'd have him come out for kind of maybe halfway through it, but they were like 3 or 4 month tours sometimes. So I get actually not even halfway through. You probably came out for about the last month. And then on the autumn tours, which when I was gone for 2 months, I didn't have him come out at all. So it was very, although physically I was able to kind of have a bit more rest, emotionally and psychologically, it was very tough. I just, and that was the thing. I couldn't really, people used to say, oh, it must be incredible. You're going to all these amazing places and you're performing at all these amazing venues, which I was, but my heart was always, you know, with my son, and it was difficult. It was just very emotionally challenging for him and me. And so in the end, it got to be too much. I couldn't do it. I developed stomach problems and everything. I'd have nightmares that I was losing him in an airport, or I would get left behind. It was terrible. But, you know, looking back now at all those places, I'm so grateful for the opportunity of being a Celtic Woman. I mean, they are places and venues, iconic places that I will never, I know, I mean, unless some miracle happens, but I know I'll never get the opportunity to, you know, perform in such amazing places. You know, I remember actually one elderly gentleman who was one of the caretakers in one of the theatres we were in. There was actually 2 stages. They built a new stage in front of this old stage, and we got chatting before one of the shows, or just in sound check, and he was telling me, he said, you know, Elvis used to play this backstage, this space, you know, every time he returned. And just even having those moments and those opportunities to be in these venues, that's such history, you know. So it was an incredible experience, and it led on to, you know, other work opportunities. But yeah, I think you just have to really, I guess my advice to anybody going on tours, you really do have to look after yourself physically, you know, and at the same time, enjoy it. You know, really have just enjoy every moment of it, because you really don't know when that's this business. It's so precarious. You really don't know. It's so unpredictable when work is going to be there and when it's not, or when a big opportunity is going to happen. So I wish I could have enjoyed the whole kind of the Celtic Woman a bit more just for that aspect of it. But yeah, it was just difficult, being kind of so torn that way as a mom.
And I know they've brought you back, you and I know Lynn, who's with you. I mean, you guys have gone back and forth several times there, but so as that wound down, what did you do with your career from there? I mean, what have you done?
Because of Celtic Woman, I got to work a lot in the States. I got to work a lot, kind of within the LDS community, quite a lot. So I worked with Jenny Oaks Baker, and I've done quite a lot of concerts with her. And I worked with Kurt Bester and some of he does his Christmas show. I've worked with yourself, Jason. We performed on your album. We've done a concert together. Yeah, so
some awesome concerts together. My favorite of all time.
Yay! It opened doors working kind of stateside that never would have happened for me in that regard. I've gone back to doing some musical theatre, some opportunities here, which I love, which is my first love, because I love the whole kind of experience of being involved in the story when it's a musical theater piece, because it's a play with music. And so I love just that whole journey. It actually makes it my job as an actress or an artist or singer easier, because I kind of feel like I'm already, you have that progression of the emotional journey of a piece. So I'm less focused on myself vocally, my focus is on telling the story a bit more and kind of connecting with what's gone on before, with the scene before, or what the next scene is, what I'm leading or bringing the audience to in the next scene. So I've got a chance to do that more, which I've really, really enjoyed. Was out again on tour Christmas time with Jenny, so that was wonderful. And then, of course, before all of that, we had COVID. So we'd like 2 years of no performing opportunities being available. So I had this space built just to teach just before it, just in February. And then we had the lockdown, so I couldn't have any kids in to teach. So I ended up turning the space into kind of like almost more like a TV studio, because I ended up doing a lot of virtual concerts online. And that kind of started out of just Christmas with personally knowing some families who weren't able to be together. So, and that's one of my favorite times to perform, is during Christmas. So I just kind of had an idea of how do I bring these families together and make it a personal experience for them, because they weren't able to be together. So I gave them kind of like a list of Christmas songs that they could pick from. So they could pick all different people in the family would pick a song, because whichever one meant, something kind of significant to them. And so they put together their own kind of Christmas concert. And so we would talk in between, and they would share why the song meant something to them. So it was a really lovely experience. But so I had to learn a lot on the job of like, how do I even use a mixing desk, first of all? How do I link that into my laptop, into Zoom, and so that they actually have a proper sound? So I did all of that, like most other kind of artists during that time, we had to kind of teach ourselves, and just enough to get by. Thank goodness we don't have to rely on our own DIY skills. Yeah, so still performing, still recording for different writers. During the lockdown, I performed quite a lot for an incredibly talented young woman in London who's written like about 8 musicals. She's only 22.
Wow. And
she's going to be huge, but had an opportunity to record some of her stuff. So still doing stuff and still performing like whenever somebody wants me to.
I think one of the things you said earlier about bringing in the story into your music, and I think as I had the opportunity to spend several weeks with you recording on some projects with my music, but I always found interesting is you didn't ever get kind of frazzled about the music part of it. It was more, and when you talk about the story, that actually makes a lot of sense. When we were in the studio, we were working on Evermore Park, the theme park, soundtrack. And I think one of the things that was really fun to watch is Chuck would come to, we'd be planning on maybe doing one song, and all of a sudden he'd have a, squirrel that we'd chase. Hey, let's sing this werewolf lullaby, or let's sing this banshee thing, or, all these different locations. And what was interesting is you and your team that you brought with you from Ireland for that project was able to just immerse yourself in the story. And I think as you're explaining that in that way, that makes way more sense how that soundtrack of Evermore Park came together. And then I know there was the opportunities, we didn't even mention about Stories of Hogwarts, the Harry Potter soundtrack. When we were working on that, the Evermore Park, that was kind of the beginnings of Chuck working on the Warner Brothers project for Harry Potter's Hogwarts Legacy, which how cool is that, right? When it comes to
I know
stories.
it's kind of funny, because at that time we didn't, I don't think we were really sure where anything was going to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of felt like it was just a bit of an experiment in a way.
It really was. It was 5-6 years ago. The idea was, hey, this video game is going to happen. You can't talk to anybody about it. You can't say anything, but here's kind of an idea that may or may not ever happen. What if you had a troll come in here? What if you had, just this, but what was neat, I thought, about it was the magical part of it. And where you guys have the cool Irish accents. That made it all the easier to make sound real. But it really was. We were kind of throwing ourselves into this story that hadn't been written yet. And
yeah, it was a lot of, it was like improv.
It really was.
It was literally like improv. And I think Chuck knew what he was hearing. He knew what he was hearing in his head. He knew what his idea was and where he wanted to go with it. And so I guess trying to communicate that to all of us, so it was just like, it was scary, because it was just like, definitely challenging, but he was great that way. He was able to kind of steer things once he started his ear was picking up on what he was hearing. He would kind of hone in on that and go, yeah, that's it, kind of more this, and let's go this. And then he would start to explain things technically, musically, and I'm like, I think out of the three of us, Lynn was certainly the one who had all of that kind of theory. And I was just like, it's going over my head. It's going over my head. Just give me the emotion, give me the story. Where do you want me to go with that? And I'll just feel it. And hopefully I'll learn from the other girls where they're going, because they understand what you're talking about music, technically. But
we call it techno babble when people get all excited and everybody else's eyes glaze over.
Oh my God, there was a lot of those moments. There's a lot of those moments where my eyes glazed over, for sure.
The one thing, and I think this is a good tip for musicians, is when you get thrown into these maybe scary situations like you talked about, it wasn't, it was out of your comfort zone. You feel, I think a lot of times people that are performers or singers, or, you have this imposter syndrome that I think sometimes plagues you. I'm sure there was many times where you'd be up on that big stage and, you think, well, why am I here? I'm not as good as this person. How do you...
Do you know what though? The funny thing is that didn't hit me until much later in life.
Really?
I think when you're younger, because I think when you're younger, you don't know any different. So you're just going pure instinct. You don't have anything to compare yourself to. You don't have a past of yourself to compare yourself to, and you haven't been out in the industry long enough to kind of really be influenced or affected or compare yourself to anybody else. So for me, when I was younger, it was a lot more, I was less worried. But I'm going to come back to what you're saying, but here's something that I did learn over the years. So I was great on stage. I was great. I could deliver on stage, but in the rehearsal process, I was very inhibited because it was an imposter syndrome that I had, but I was really worried about what my peers would think, And so that shy girl would come back in a rehearsal space. And I think it was not helpful to a director and my fellow actors on stage, because my performance might quadruple when it came to actually performing, because that was my safe space when it came to actually having an audience in front of me. But in rehearsal, you know, then they were like, whoa, you know, they had to react to this other kind of performance I was giving on when it was kind of a live performance. And so, and that would be difficult for a director as well, because it would inform how, you know, how the scene would play out. So as I got older, I did learn to trust that it's a lot more helpful to myself and everybody else more, just throw myself in the rehearsal space, even if I get something wrong or it's ridiculous or whatever. It's just to trust that, you know, that it's more helpful, and it's actually harder on yourself if you don't just go for it. And so that part of that did actually, you know, help in that process when we were working with Chuck on a lot of the Evermore and the Harry Potter, the Hogwarts music. It was just to just trust it and just kind of go with it. But a challenge for me was the songwriting, because I'd never written anything before. And so to suddenly, and I never even attempted to, because I just thought that's not my strength. You know, I know what my strength is. My strength is my performing and my, you know, and I know that I can sing a bit. So I know that that's my thing. So having to do that wasn't something, that's not something that comes naturally to me. So that I found that extremely challenging for the Evermore project, was to sit down and actually to do that. And it was a much lengthier process for me than I think it was for the other girls, but it was a really good thing to push myself to do. So there are a lot of really good challenges as part of that whole experience in lots of ways, lots of other stuff. But
what I think is really awesome, and probably one of the main reasons you're successful, is you've put yourself, you haven't been afraid to dive in to learn something new, or, you know, try something. I think there's some people that just think, oh, I can't do that, and so they don't ever even try. And I remember watching you write some songs. I think some of the best songs that were written probably as part of those projects, I think a lot of them came from you. I think of the Celtic Dreaming project, and we had that Christmas album that you'd done. I think it's Shooting Star I think that was you that wrote that tune, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that one's, I think, still a hit. That's somebody's going to find that someday, and it's going to end up on some TV show. That song is awesome.
That would be a miracle upon a miracle if that happened. But you know what, though, I do think having just so much, I still don't think it's a talent of mine to songwrite, but I think because I had spent so many years being around and it being in that environment of kind of learning and recognizing in myself when something is working, or when you're kind of hitting the zone, do you know what I mean? So I think the years of performing kind of helped me in that process of writing, and kind of feeling it in my body when, you know, if you know, the next part of the verse was the right place to go, or if this was the right place, or musically, whatever, because I have no music theory either. I barely read, you know, so I mean, literally me doing those songs was literally me just singing into my phone, because I couldn't even play any.
I remember you used to call them, you're the first person that I think you called them the dots, you know.
The dots, yeah. The dots.
The music,
I think it's an Irish English thing. Yeah, the dots, the music. So I mean, I can follow them, but I can't, you know, really play. So yeah, so I was grateful to that I had kind of the years of experience when I was kind of thrown into a position like that to have to do, because I had to call on other skills that you know, where I was falling short, you know, on in other ways to be able to do it. It's still not something I sit down and try and do, though, because it's not something that comes naturally. It's still hard work for me to do that.
Right, and I know in the future, I mean, you've talked about, we were talking earlier about what your big dream would be, to be able to go and just perform and go around the hotel. I mean, you should share a little bit about that.
I know, because it's so unambitious, but I think it's a sign of age. I think it is a sign of age. Like, like a dream job now to me would just to be singing in a beautiful hotel on the beach, just a nice piano bar where people are just eating their food in a restaurant, and I'm just background music, and I just go and do a couple of hours, and then I spend the rest of the day on the beach or exploring. And yeah, I love that. That would be lovely. I would quite happily spend a month in one hotel in one country and then just travel on and just be, yeah, just the background noise. That would be lovely. And I could sing all the songs that are just not self-indulgent, but just, you know, the guilty pleasure songs that you don't necessarily always get to sing, or cruise ships. I'm hoping to get out in the cruise ships. So then I can combine my traveling.
You can do the traveling, and you can be the singing travel guy or the tour guide, right?
I know, but I'm getting old as well. So look, I need an easy gig.
Well, I've got an easy gig for you down in Costa Rica with my team. Anytime you want to bring a group down there, you can. We can make it happen.
So what am I going to do? Just get a bunch of people to come hang out with me?
We'll do a girls trip for you. You can come down. We'll bring a girls trip, and I don't know, 10 to 20 people. I've got friends down there. They take care of everything. You can go sit in the hot springs at the volcano and finish the tour down on the beach with massages, I guess.
Right there's the invitation to all of those moms and daughters who want to go on we'll go on. Have you met my mom?
I've talked to her, I know, over Zoom a long time ago. You can bring your mom with you, right?
Oh, I was going to say, I could barely imagine bringing my mom down there.
We got the sloths and the monkeys. If we go to the one place, you just got to make sure you have the windows closed, because the monkeys will come steal your eggs and your bananas. So.
Well, I don't mind the monkeys coming and stealing the eggs and the bananas. It's the spiders and the snakes, and it's all those big things that I would freak out about.
I've only seen 2 snakes in about 12 trips down there. So, and we were actually looking for them. So that was why we found them. So
I know, but see, I attract the things I'm scared of. It's true. Yeah. Every camping trip, or every time I've gone somewhere in the States where there might be bears around, everybody goes, "Oh, we never see bears here. We never see bear." My first camping trip in Lake Tahoe, a bear was circling our tent at nighttime because the people who were camping beside us left dog food out in a dog bowl for their dog. So the bear was circling. And then and 2 other trips after that, a bear went past me and my son at a restaurant. I had to take him down because he was a lot younger. So we needed to have a bit of a chat because he was kind of misbehaving. And a bear just went past us. And I couldn't see properly because it was kind of twilight. I thought it was a big poodle. I thought it was a giant poodle. And it literally ran past me and my son. We both just went silent. And at the same time, we looked at each other and said, "That was a bear." So I need to attract things that I'm scared of, or people say I'm never going to meet.
Well, if you do want to be a tour guide, you don't sell it with telling people about snakes or bears or other. We'll talk about sloths and cuddly monkeys but yeah, no.
Well, okay, well, we'll definitely do the sloths because I identify as a sloth. I don't identify, but if I was an animal, I'd be a sloth. That's for sure.
So last question for you. So if you were in front of a group of college kids and could just, you had a couple minutes of advice to give to somebody who's thinking, do I want to go into the music as a career or not? Or just advice in general, what would you tell those kids?
There's kind of there's a lot, but first of all, you're gonna be told no a lot. You're gonna receive more no's than yeses. Yeah, that's part of the industry. It really, really is. But the things that happen generally because they're the right things to happen, and the things that you get a no to is generally because there's a good reason, and not to take those rejections as, don't take them personally in the regard that you're not good enough, or that what you have to offer isn't enough, because there's generally other reasons that have nothing to do with your talent. There's other things that really have nothing to do with it. And like I say, sometimes those things don't happen because other things are, dare I say, planned for you to happen. And those other things that happen either lead to meeting somebody else that leads to another wonderful opportunity. So try not to be discouraged by the no's. Trust that, you know, you have the talent, and really believe in yourself in that regard. Also, if I was doing again to myself, I would tell myself not to be so scared, like in the rehearsal space or whatever, and to just really trust my instincts and not be so afraid in that regard, you know, to really trust your instincts, and try not to compare yourself to other people, because, you know, yeah, maybe somebody else can sing higher, or maybe somebody else can do something vocally, or they can do something else. You have to, I think it's really important to recognize early what is individual about you, and to embrace that, and to know that you bring that and nobody else can bring that, you know, to a performance or to whatever it is. So it's really recognizing and embracing what's different and individual about you. And that's something that's really special that nobody else will have. But it doesn't mean that you don't ignore the things you might need to strengthen, you know, and just be aware of what needs to be worked on, where your weaknesses are, you know, because we can always be doing better in those things. Yeah. And to try and not take it too serious, have fun, try not to take yourself too serious, and really enjoy it, and enjoy people, you know, and enjoy what you learn, and really have fun, and enjoy the process, enjoy the journey of it, and don't take any of it for granted. You know, you really don't know when those opportunities, particularly in this industry, are going to come again. But one little thing I will say, if they don't come, there's more than just one thing that you're good at. There's other skills and there's other talents that you know, that you can develop if those opportunities don't happen, you know? So I think that was very clear during the lockdowns. You know, it's like all these artists say, oh, I can't do anything else. Well, actually, you've just never had to find out what else you could be good at.
Yep.
But we all, you know, had to kind of really look underneath the bonnet, or you call it, what you call it,
the hood.
The hood. We all had to look underneath our personal hoods and go, okay, well, what else is kind of in this, you know, this tool bag of what, you know, I'm made of, that maybe there's something else I can develop. So I think that's important, that we don't just kind of limit ourselves to just thinking that that's the only thing we can do, but to develop as much as we can in ourselves, I guess.
Awesome. Well, a lot of value bombs right there you just dropped. Hopefully people were listening and go back and listen to that again, because I just want to tell you I appreciate all of the friendship and just all of the fun things we've been able to experience, I know, together. But it's been really fun to see your success as well, and just
see how I appreciate it.
You've done
well. Thank you for the opportunities, and thank you for believing in me and giving me those opportunities too.
I think there's lots of bright things in your future. If you ever got to Utah,
I don't know about that.
you got an invitation to come. We'll do a house concert here anytime you want. We'll come do a dinner house concert, and hopefully we'll sell it out for you. So
okay, yeah. Well, I'm due to be back out there again November, December. That's a bit of a crazy concert or crazy tour, but I have my work visa, so I'm able to come there anytime again.
Well, when you're ready to get out of Ireland, I know it's a good place for the next few months, but when you're ready to have a change of scenery, give me a call. So,
will do.
All right.
Okie dokie. Yeah, no problem. Thank you.